Okay, there we go. So you can see I modified the title just slightly. The bottom line there, higher education in a post-anthropocentric intelligence paradigm. I'm a computer scientist, mathematician. Of course, I'm going to start with the graph, but there's only really two things you need to take away from this graph. The first thing is that's log scale on the y-axis there. So this straight line here tells us that since 2012, deep neural networks have become exponentially more capable over time. So year on year, and you can actually see there's an inflection point in 2017 when Google invented the transformer, but these things have been getting exponentially more capable. The other thing you need to notice is the size of those spheres, circles, is getting bigger, which means the models are getting bigger. But a plot isn't really that good for us as humans. We sort of like more visceral things. So let's move to the world of image generation, diffusion-based image generation and GANs, and sort of get a visual exemplar of the state of progress. In 2014, Ian Goodfellow came up with generative adversarial networks, working with Yoshua Bengio and the team in Montreal. And that was a huge deal. And you can see like we can generate a human face, and it's like really blurry and black and white and a few pixels. And no one thought we would have a neural net that could do that so soon. In 2021, which is just 3 years ago, OpenAI released Daley 1, which was their first image generator. And again, I thought, wow, this is amazing. It can put people and objects in context. You can describe in natural language what you want that context to look like. But look at the faces, right? This is not very good. Last year, 2023, Stable Diffusion XL, released by Stability AI as an open source project that people could continue to modify and train models on. Very, very close to photorealistic human. So here in 2024, what does this all look like? Well, there we go. I have a running joke with the provost that my job is actually Provost's AI hamster. You see running in my little wheel. I missed my team back in WTS. I'm all alone in the provost's office, but there's some Tracy here. So you know what it's like. People know. And a colleague said, you should make a movie about that, like a provost or a hamster that becomes a chief AI officer and just like put your life into. So hopefully this link works. This is a movie that I made about my job. Oh, that's kind of loud. I'm just going to turn that on. This is way too loud. All of this is AI generated. So this is me giving a little conversation, walking through an airport. I'm going to go and give a talk. There I am on a plane. Even got my trademark turtleneck, right? Black turtleneck. It took me about 2 hours to do this while watching the Olympics with my kids. My partner is a professional animator, Sheridan trained, worked in the industry for 20 years. And she looked at it and said, 3 years ago, this would have taken a team of 5 people several months to do. We would have had to model the hamster and rig it. There would have had to be all the background and 2 hours while watching the Olympics. So that's viscerally different than 10 years ago, where we were really excited about a black and white human face without even the rest of the human. That's the pace of change. Oh, screen sharing has stopped. Oh, can you put my slides back up? Okay, so the point I'm making is things are changing fast and the pace of change is continuing to accelerate. Yeah. I'm the PDF, yeah, Acrobat. Yep, that's it. Just to the right, that's the one. Perfect, thank you. So here are some tasks. This is from the Stanford AI report for 2024. tasks that we used to think of as requiring human intelligence to do are now being done by machines at a level almost as good, or better than humans. And so pick your favorite task. Tasks like English language understanding. Prior to 2019, computers couldn't understand English language in any kind of serious way. And now they very much can. I want to look at a particularly challenging one, competition level mathematics. So International Math Olympiad level. If you think these problems are easy, download the problem set from the 2024 International Math Olympiad, just happened last month, and see how many you can solve. I cannot solve all of them. So these are super challenging, high-end pure mathematics questions meant for the very, very brightest young people. So the International Math Olympiad is a big deal. If you win a gold medal there, your career is sort of set. Every grad school is going to fight over wanting you in their program. And prior to 2021, computers couldn't even approach these problems. In 2023, we were almost at human level, average human level, not exceptional human level. And then last month, Google DeepMind entered AlphaProof and Alpha Geometry into the International Math Olympiad, and it won a silver medal. 1 point short of a gold medal. And again, gold medal in the IMO, that sets your career for life. So remember that, that's going to be important. So there's all sorts of things that all of a sudden machines are good at that feel like they're related to human intelligence. There's also things they can't do. And some of these things they can't do are real, like the computers just can't do that yet. Other things are user error. And people really like these things. They blow up on X and social media because like, oh, I don't have to worry about AI because it can't even do this. Look how dumb it is. So then I don't have to worry about it. So this is the classic example, asking ChatGPT to count how many R's are there in the word strawberry. And it gets it wrong. And it gets it wrong again. And then someone posts that on Twitter and says, see, look, AI is dumb. It can't possibly do anything. And I have to hold in my mind, AI is dumb. I shouldn't be worried about it. And it was 1 point short of gold in the IMO. So like, if you're a critical thinker, you're looking at that thinking, somewhere something's not right here. And what's not right here is the AI, the large language model underneath ChatGPT, never actually sees the characters you type in. The very first thing that happens with your text is it gets tokenized. Chunks of characters get turned into a single token, which we can think of as being kind of like an emoji. And that makes sense. There are strings of characters like ing in the English language that occur frequently, so I can compress those down to one token, but also there's semantics with ing. If I see ing at the end of a verb stem, it's probably a present participle. So that's actually smart and the machine learns all of this. And so it sees tokens, it doesn't see characters. And if you know that, you can ask it the right way. How many R's are there in strawberry? And I put a space between each letter, so each letter gets to be an individual token instead of getting mashed together. And then ChatGPT has no problem, like there's 3, what's wrong with you, of course. So this isn't actually a limitation of the AI, this is user error. This is poor use of AI and poor understanding of the tool that you're trying to use. And this comes up again and again. So there's sort of a broad range of reactions to generative AI, but I'm going to talk about 2 camps. One camp is the gentleman on the left there. These images are both AI generated, by the way. And the gentleman on the left, it is the one posting, it can't even count the number of R's in strawberry. Everything's going to be fine. Nothing's going to change. And feeling very smug and happy about that. And there are people publishing papers with titles, large language models can't X. And by the time the paper gets peer reviewed and published, people have been doing X with large language models for 6 months because the paper was written about GPT 3.5 and people are using GPT 4.0 now. And again, that trend of getting exponentially more capable. And now you've written a paper saying large language models can't X, and you concluded they probably never will be able to because of these reasons. And by the time it's published, it's out of date. And that's in the literature now on your CV. And so be very, very careful about writing a paper. It's okay to say, current technology, this exact model can't do X. That's legitimate. Saying the inference that therefore they will never be able to do X is a dangerous one. This is Lisa Dole, 9-dan Go player, widely recognized as one of the best, most creative people ever to play the game of Go. In 2016, DeepMind challenged him. We want our AlphaGo AI system to play a match against you. And he immediately accepted. And when the Korean media interviewed him, he said, like, I'm not worried at all. It's going to be 5-0 for me because machines will never match the ingenuity and intelligence of a human. He lost the first 3 games. He did win 1 game of the 5-game match. And that was with 8-year-old technology, which in an exponentially accelerating AI world is, like hand crank technology. We're going to come back to him. New York Times last month published a nice little profile piece on Lisa Dole and how he felt after losing to AlphaGo 8 years ago. Defeated by AI, a legend in the board game Go warns, get ready for what's next. So what is next? What is Lisa Dole warning us about? I can't predict the future, but I am a believer in the methodology of strategic foresight. It's sort of the closest thing we can get to predicting the future. So instead of trying to say, here's what's going to happen, because nobody can do that, you sit down with a bunch of smart people and say, what are the possible things that could happen? What are the likely scenarios? Scenario planning is sort of like the traditional version of strategic foresight. And for AI, there's 2 main possible scenarios. Scenario on the left is stagnation. We hit a wall. We will, for sure, at some point, hit a wall that will require theoretical and practical breakthroughs to get beyond. And maybe we're there now. Maybe whatever AI does now, this is kind of as good as it's ever going to get. Today's the day that AI progress stalled. And if that's the case, you're in good shape. CTL has courses, a series of courses you can take to get you up to speed. There's a CTL community of practice on using generative AI in the classroom. I encourage you to join. It's not heavy commitment. You can drop in when you're able, but some of the conversations are fantastic. Good to share stories and techniques that work, because there's sort of no one size fits all. I can't tell you, here's how to use AI in your classroom, because you might be a medieval historian, or you might be a computer science professor, and the way you're going to use that is profoundly different. So we're okay. The other scenario, though, is we get another few years of exponential improvement. And so that's the one I want to look at today. And why do I want to look at that one? Why do I lend credence to that scenario? Because it's likely. Here, oh no, I'll tell you what the things at the bottom are. There's lots of popular media around AI is stalling. AI winter is coming again. If you're an AI researcher, you've been through a few AI winters now, so you know it's coming at some point. One of the potential threats is the models are going to get too big and they're going to be too slow. So it'll take like 100 years to get an answer, and that's not useful. Another potential threat is that the models are going to run out of data. And these newspaper articles have been posed sort of almost since the very first release of ChatGPT. AI is running out of data. And then the last one over here is it's going to use too much power to train these things. And that one actually seems to be the most proximal concern. So when you actually model these things out and do the math, the reality is that we have about another 6 years of exponential improvement if nothing else changes. However, this power constraint here, the amount of power used to do inference on a large language model has gone down by 2 orders of magnitude in the past 2 years, because there are a lot of engineers working on this. This is a really important practical problem. This is a powerful technology that can do good for the world, but no one wants it to do that at the cost of global warming. So to make this a green technology, it has to be efficient, and there are a lot of people working on making it efficient. But in a worst case scenario where there's no more efficiencies to be found, which I don't believe, we've still got another 6 years. What does the future look like? How do we categorize that? There are as many different ways of categorizing advanced AI looking to the future as there are futurists who need tenure. I'm going to pick this framework because it's as good as any, just because it was popularized by OpenAI a couple of months ago. Bloomberg picked it up and blasted it out, so everyone's probably seen it. It's part marketing because it's OpenAI, but it's pretty reasonable. So 5 levels: chatbots, reasoners, agents, innovators, and organizations. So let's start with level 1. And for us now, in 2024, at the end of the summer, level 1 is the past. Let's look how it affects teaching, and then I'm going to look a little bit at research as well. So Bill Gates, about 18 months ago, said that by now, AI is going to be a better tutor than any human being. How many people agree with that? Right. So Bill was wrong. It is good at some things. It is better than me at some things. It's better than me at answering student queries at 2 o'clock in the morning. And doing so kindly. But there's lots of things I do as a human tutor that AI doesn't do yet. So Bill, I know the point he was trying to make, and it was a good point, but AI has not completely replaced human tutors. But it is pretty good. There's over 1,000 studies now in the literature, some better than others, where you can go in and pick your discipline, like, here's computer science at Harvard, and say, how should I integrate an AI tutor into my discipline? And again, it's not a one size fits all. It's not every discipline is going to use an AI tutor the same way. It's going to be really different across disciplines, but there's a lot of studies now. You can go in and see which interventions have been proven effective. The net conclusion of all of these studies is absolutely yes, AI can be a really, really useful aid to learning. But there's also warnings in these studies, and the warnings come down to, if you don't implement it thoughtfully, it can actually make things worse. So if you implement AI in your classroom, and there's some studies in sort of K-12 classrooms where the students just end up outsourcing everything to the AI and never learn anything themselves, obviously that's a really bad outcome. So thinking carefully about how you integrate it is critically important. Find literature in your area for the subject you're teaching and see what's worked and what hasn't, and what the concerns are. Few examples, just to get you started if you haven't been doing this already. This is Anthropic's Claude 3 Opus. I said, please pretend that you are an experienced professor of Assyriology. This is a really good prompting technique, is giving the chatbot or LLM a persona. The big LLMs sort of read everything ever written, and so they know how to adopt a persona, and giving them a persona gives so much context. It tells them sort of what you want, what format you want it in. So I say, pretend you're a professor of Assyriology. I want a course outline for a course on the Hurrian language. Why did I pick Hurrian? Hurrian is a very obscure, poorly attested language from the ancient Near East. There's only one good reference grammar, and as far as I know, there's only ever been one university course taught on it at the University of Chicago in 2012, and the website's long gone. So it said, okay, here's how I would teach Hurrian. And of course, that doesn't help me at all because I don't read or speak Hurrian. But I have a friend, Emily, who is an Assyriologist, and I sent it to her. And she wrote back and said, there are some things I would change if I were to teach this, but those are actually matters of style. Like if you gave me this course outline and said, just teach exactly this, she said, I could do it, I would feel good about it, and my students would learn. So even on a topic as obscure as the Hurrian language, it was able to put together a course outline that a professional Assyriologist who had dedicated her life to the languages of the ancient Near East said, yeah, that's pretty good. It's not perfect. There's still tweaks I want to make. So that's probably true for your field as well. This particular example is based on a real life story from one of our students. I took the course outline for our second year electric circuits course in engineering, because we're here in the engineering building today. I see some electrical engineers here in the room. This isn't a really fun course. It's kind of boring and dull, but if you want to be an electrical engineer when you grow up, you absolutely have to take and pass this course. So I took the course outline, dumped it in, and told ChatGPT, I think this is GPT-4 Turbo, help. I'm a really bad person, I confess. I haven't been to class ever. My final exam is tomorrow morning. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I need to know what to study. And so ChatGPT, GPT-4 Turbo, used its knowledge of electrical engineering and how professors tend to write exams, and it triaged the topics for me. And it triaged the topics for me in a way that was really good. It's what I would have done myself if I were triaging the topics. And again, it was available at 2 o'clock in the morning. Prof and TAs, probably not. And it was really nice to me too. It never once said, Mark Daley, you're a bad student. You should feel ashamed of yourself. It just like got right down to work. You're laughing, but when I talk to our students, that's one of their favorite things about it. It's not judgy. I don't feel embarrassed telling it exactly how I'm feeling and exactly where I'm at, because I know it's not going to judge me. It's just a piece of software. So then I said, okay, let's jump in. Obviously, I'm not the world's best student if we're having this conversation at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's, it started teaching me phasors with the classic Ferris wheel analogy and eased me into the mathematics. And it did a pretty good job. I went back and forth for about 20 turns, and I was pretty happy with the level of tutoring I got. I was really happy that accessibility was mentioned in the opening remarks today, because this is a profoundly enabling tool for accessibility. Partway through the tutoring session, I asked ChatGPT, "Nihongo ga wakirimasu ka?" And it said, yeah, sure, I speak Japanese, and just immediately switched to tutoring me in fluent Japanese. More than 12% of our students, the undergraduate level, speak another language as their first language. I once had to take a math course, pure math course in French. My French is not very good. And my bucket was full just trying to understand the language. And it made the material so much harder to access for me. And this was before the days of Google Translate even. But this goes beyond Google Translate, because Google Translate is one and done. I can take course notes, drop it in, get it in my native language, but that's it. The conversation's over now. This is a conversation. I can put in the material and say, tutor me in my native language, and I can ask follow-up questions. And it can respond and explain to me. And this is not just true for language. This is also true for learners who need different paths to learning, who need different accommodations. Many accommodations that are really high effort and high social anxiety for students to request are now available through the affordances of this technology. So I had an undergrad student about a year and a half ago who was brilliant, but dyslexic. And previously in her life, when she wanted to write something, she would have to impose on a friend, a family member, a writing center to help her. And that caused her a lot of embarrassment and anxiety. ChatGPT came out and she said, now I have a piece of software. I'm not embarrassed at all asking it for help. I can workshop and end up with something that I read and say, yes, that's what I meant to say. And it's easier for me to communicate with other people. So this is my favorite chart in the whole deck because it's data. I like making decisions based on data. On the right-hand side there, you have the level of play in the game of Go for the past 70 years. And what you notice is that from 1950 straight through to 2016, the level of play amongst professional Go players, so at the very top of the field, was stagnant. We thought we'd figured out the game. We know everything that we've been playing the game for over 2,000 years. We know everything there is to know about the game. We know the major strategies. We know how to train young people how to play the game. We have solved the game of Go. And there's a few outliers like Lisadol, who are a little bit better, but it's all within 1 sigma of the mean, and that's it. We figured it out. And then all of a sudden, in 2016, something changes. And what changed was Lisadol got beat by AlphaGo. And as soon as that happened, most of the top professional Go players in the world started training against AI. And what we see is after that, the level of play, and this is human against human play. This is not human against machine. This is not humans having a machine in their pocket that they're allowed to consult. This is just humans playing humans. Humans start getting better at the game of Go after being stagnant for at least 70 years, but probably a lot longer than that. Whole new strategies. If you're really interested in this, look up move 37 in game 2. AlphaGo played this move and everyone thought it was a blunder at first, and it turned out it was a sort of like absolutely brilliant, creative new way of thinking about the game. So that's evidence. That's not my opinion. That's evidence that training against an AI tutor can make you better, even if you are one of the very top human beings in the field, if the field is Go. I realize Go is not the whole world, unless you're a serious Go player, and then you'll say, actually, Mark, all of life is encoded in the game of Go. Okay, so what about research? How is AI affecting research? Well, there's lots of really nice practical breakthroughs. At the beginning of this year, DeepMind and MIT announced the discovery of a whole new class of antibiotics using a technology not too dissimilar from what AlphaGo used. And that's a real good. In a world where people still die from antibiotic-resistant bacterial infections, we have a new weapon. This will literally save lives. That's exciting. Stephen Cowley is the director of the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory. You should read this op-ed in the Washington Post. We are closer than ever to net positive energy generation nuclear fusion, thanks to AI-based techniques in modeling. So the recent move to using AI models and AI assistants in plasma physics modeling and fusion modeling has pushed the field forward in a way where it hadn't been able to move for quite some time. But it's worth reading his words rather than mine, because I'm definitely not a physicist. I am a theoretical computer scientist. I was really excited about this paper, Mathematical Discoveries from Program Search with Large Language Models. A large language model augmented with some additional capacities discovered some new solutions to really hard problems in TCS, including the online bin packing problem, which doesn't sound exciting if you're not a computer scientist, but to a computer scientist, wow, they found a new lower bound, and no human had ever found that. And so, that's real. That's a real contribution. It got published in Nature. Now, probably that particular algorithm would not have been published in Nature if it had just been done by a human. There was some like, gee, wow, that a computer had helped with it. But of course, it's Nature. You got to have a gee, wow. So social scientists are feeling smug now, thinking, well, you STEM people are going to be replaced by robots, but we're fine, right? Not so fast. This preprint, so it's not published yet, it's preprint. It is on Twitter a month ago. Can LLM predict results of social science experiments? And these are survey-based experiments. And the answer is yes. R value of 0.85. So what they did was they took 70 survey-based social scientists. So it was like a lot of psychology and like behavioral economics. They took 70 studies that had not yet been published, put anywhere on the internet. So none of the models they used would have had a chance to see the study. So they couldn't cheat and look at the results. And they replicated the survey by taking state-of-the-art large language models and giving them personas. You are a 27-year-old unemployed machinist mate living in the Rust Belt in Ohio. These are your parents. This is your socioeconomic status. Answer these survey questions. You are a university professor at Princeton. You are an astrophysicist. Answer these questions. So they simulated a random sample of the American population using actual demographics drawn from census. And they found that their synthetic surveys, where they were just asking like ChatGPT, GPT-4, over and over again with different personas, correlated pretty well. Not perfectly. So what does that mean? I mean, on the one hand, that's kind of scary. On the other hand, a large language model like GPT-4 has read every piece of literature ever written. It's read every study ever published. It's read every biography. So it's kind of not surprising that it can accurately inhabit the perspective of various different people, but it's not a person, right? So this feels a little weird, but there it is. On a very practical side, this is Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which is a very strong model. This Twitter user took a paper. It was actually the original paper describing the attention mechanism that kicked off the LLM revolution, and dumped it in and said, could you turn this into an interactive dashboard to teach me the material in the paper? And it did. And the interactive dashboard is pretty good. It's not like super pretty. It's not perfect, but it was a lot faster to go through that interactive dashboard than it would be to read the paper de novo. And that was a one shot. I just dump in the paper and say, turn this paper into a dashboard to teach me about the important points in the paper. That makes literature surveys a little easier, especially in a highly technical field where there's a lot of details and you're like, okay, I only want to read the details if I really care about your result. I don't want to read the details a priori. Another question, journal paper. Can large language models provide useful feedback on research papers, large-scale empirical analysis? And the answer is yes. In fact, if your gold standard for review in either the Nature family of journals or iClear, which is one of the top computer science conferences in AI, if your gold standard is what are the consensus comments from all 4 or 5 reviewers, GPT-4 is actually better than any single human alone at giving you an accurate review. But it is not better than the consent. It cannot replicate the consensus opinion of 4 or 5 humans. So some good news for peer review there. But also, what this means is if you're not getting GPT-4 or Claude 3.5 to review your papers, you're giving yourself, you're selling yourself short. You're not taking an opportunity to get really good feedback. And some of the feedback it gives you is garbage, but some of the feedback reviewer 2 gives you is also garbage. So you can just ignore that. I do this with all my students now. We take multiple LLMs, we give them personas of sort of like the last person in the world we want reviewing that paper. I do not want Steve Cook to review this paper on complexity theory. So I'm going to make it Steve Cook, and it knows who Steve Cook is. And please review my paper. And every time we learn things, and our papers are stronger and better for it. Okay, but that's the past. That was level 1. We've got level 1. We are living in the world of level 1. We are moving into the world of level 2 and 3. And we're already sort of getting the first hints of level 2 and 3, but we're not there yet. My best guess is that by the winter term, we're going to be right into the heart of level 2 and 3. There's going to be new models released, new frontier models, and their agentic abilities are going to exceed the agentic abilities of what we've got right now. But let's have a look at what we've got right now. So this is back to the International Math Olympiad. DeepMind's entry gets a silver medal, 1 point short of a gold medal. Tim Gowers is one of the most important living pure mathematicians. He won a Fields Medal for unifying the fields of combinatorics and functional analysis, which is like successfully unifying trout and peanut butter into the most delicious dish ever consumed by a human. I had to come up with something visceral, because if you're not a pure mathematician, you're like, so what? There's just like these like really different math things. He's an absolute genius, and so this is, you know, he is the right person to comment on this. And prior to being involved in grading DeepMind's entry to the IMO, he thought, okay, you know, like AI is interesting. It's going to be a tool to help mathematicians, but it's not actually going to change my life. After he graded DeepMind's solutions to the IMO challenge, he felt differently. So unfortunately, the quote is cut off there, but I'll do my best to paraphrase it. On the BBC, the week after the announcement, the results came out, he was asked about this, and he said, I'm actually really glad I'm at the end of my career. Because it is now, like, for me, it is an absolute certainty that machines will be the ones discovering new mathematics. I don't know what my role as a human mathematician is going to be anymore. And he went on, it got like dark. He said, I don't know how I feel about my legacy now, knowing that the proofs of the theorems that I suffered for, I struggled so hard for, someone's going to be able to do on their laptop in 5 minutes. And so, like, I understand from Sir Timothy's standpoint, he has built up his entire self-image as like my self-image as a human being is I am super smart, I'm really good at pure math. And now there's a laptop that's better than me. Not yet, but he can see the future where the laptop's going to be better than him. But the other way of looking at that is that kid with internet access, but not a lot of educational structure around them in Bangladesh, now has access to a machine that is as smart as Tim Gowers. That's a different way of looking at the exact same fact. Japanese company called Sakana, which was founded by some really, really good people who left Google to create this startup, collaborated with a colleague of mine at UBC, and just a couple of weeks ago released the AI Scientist. Using present day technology, the AI Scientist comes up with a dozen ideas for new research topics in machine learning. So they wanted to pick on their own discipline, which was the right thing to do. And then it goes to Semantic Scholar and does a novelty check. And it immediately discovers most of its ideas, like most of us, like, oh, someone already did that 10 years ago. I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Shit. And that's how it goes in research. But it pulls out the ones that are actually novel and then scores them based on how good it thinks they are, goes through a few iterations of this, then proposes some experiments, runs the experiments. Another reason they picked machine learning is this isn't like a chemistry lab where you need like an actual robot you can just run the experiments on computer hardware. Gets the results of the experiments, updates its plan, goes through this iterative cycle, does an analysis, writes an entire paper, sends the paper out for simulated review, revises the paper based on simulated review, and then hands you the paper. About half of the papers it produces are kind of garbage. They're not wrong, they're just like not interesting. This is something a first-year master's student would write and feel like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And it's like, okay, hold on, there's some subtlety here. But some of the papers are really creative and novel. Some of them have errors in them. But in the cohort they created, there was 2 or 3 papers that actually created genuinely new contributions to the field of machine learning. They weren't groundbreaking, but they were new. And the authors argued that they met the standard for acceptance at some of the top conferences in machine learning. And reading the papers, I think you could flip a coin, but that's true of peer review anyways at a computer science conference. But they're good, they're novel contributions. Each one of these papers cost about $5 in inference time. So as someone who has to review papers for AI and machine learning conferences, I mean, as a researcher, I'm thrilled. Like, this is really exciting. I have there's like a full end-to-end AI scientist, even though it's imperfect in a lot of ways, there's a proof of principle. Imagine when the technology gets better, how much, but I'm also thinking, I'm going to have to review like 100 of these automatically generated papers because the incentives for young researchers are so strong. There's sort of like 3 conferences. And if you get a paper in one of those 3 conferences, your career is going in the right direction. And if you don't, no one's even going to give you a postdoc. And so with those kind of economic pressures, and it costs $5 when this paper was written, it probably costs $4 now. And by later in the fall, it's going to cost $2.50. There's going to be a huge incentive if I'm a struggling grad student just to click generate, and submit all of those papers. How we are going to deal with that, I do not know. Software engineers. So this is SWE Bench. This is from iClear, one of those 3 top conferences this year. This is a set of relatively easy bugs and engineering problems in GitHub repositories. So GitHub is sort of what everyone uses for storing large software systems and doing collaborative large software development. They created a benchmark for different agents that claim you just take this AI agent, plug it into your GitHub repository, and it goes through and starts fixing problems. It looks at the tickets for issues, and it just tries to fix them on its own. And this is the easier level. At the harder level, they can only fix about 12% of problems. But the top scoring model here, and you can see there are lots of these models. You can imagine there's huge economic incentives to develop these models. Top scoring model could fix 43% of easy GitHub issues completely autonomously. So if you're a developer, like, I don't care that it's only 43%. That's 43% of my time back to do the things that I want to do. If I can fix errors in my code just by pressing, hey, you go fix it, it's like having a junior developer at my beck and call. It's brittle. It has some interesting failure modes, but 43% of the time, it just works. This is my favorite. This is a tweet just last week. This guy took his 8-year-old daughter and set her up with Cursor, which is one of these AI integrated development environments. And she wanted to make an app to talk to Harry Potter. And in 45 minutes, just by talking to Cursor in plain English and giving it feedback, no, I didn't want that, I want this. No, it needs to be pink, not blue. She was able to create the app she wanted. So we live right now in a universe where an 8-year-old who has an idea can articulate her idea in natural language of an 8-year-old, and get a working app out the other end. This isn't going to work for everything. If you have a really complex app, this is not going to happen. But 3 years ago, the only way to create that app was for that 8-year-old to either badger someone else to do it, or to learn how to program herself from scratch and do everything. And that would have taken years. And instead, in 45 minutes, she got what she wanted. So what do level 4 and 5 look like? I don't know. Anyone who tells you they know what level 4 and 5 look like is someone you should be kind of skeptical of. I mean, listen, but if you actually want to see level 4 and 5, read good speculative fiction. E&M Banks has a really nice universe where AIs are benevolent and they sort of take over governance, and then humans are just free to do whatever they want. Like, all the hard stuff's taken care of for you by the AI. And that sounds great, but there's other speculative fiction where it's not as good. And so those are conversations we're having right now, and we as citizens who are alive right now need to really be paying attention to those conversations and ensuring that we are putting pressure on our elected officials and electing the right officials who are thinking about these things. I did a little strategic foresight exercise for Florentine and Alan and the leadership. And it wasn't just on AI. It was sort of looking at all of the forces that are pressing in on higher education right now. But one of them, for me, again, of course, I'm biased because of where I am and what I know, the role of universities in an era of abundant intelligence. And being a good strategic foresight practitioner, I came up with a set of scenarios. Some of those scenarios are kind of uninteresting, but we're pragmatic, so we put them in there. But the one I want to talk about is this one: human-centric transformation. So this is the rest of the New York Times headline. Lee Sedol was one of the world's top Go players, and still is. And his shocking loss to an AI opponent, was a harbinger of a new unsettling era. It may not be a happy ending, he says. And again, this is a human being who has constructed his entire self-image around, I am super smart and super good at the game Go, which everyone acknowledges is really hard. And so I get it. I completely understand why he felt the way he did when, especially in that first match one. I remember watching it. It was broadcast, and you could just like feel despair oozing out of him. And there was a point in the game where he absolutely should have resigned, and all the commentators who are professional Go players were saying like, normally we would resign here, but he just kept playing because he like did not want. And later he said, I didn't want to lose for humanity, which okay, dude, it's Go. I understand it's your whole life, but humanity isn't losing here. But I understand where he's coming from. It's the same mentality of Tim Gowers, who I respect, like absolutely enormously, but he's seeing it from an individual perspective. I have constructed this image of who I am and what I am, and I'm really good at things that machines didn't used to be able to do. I'm really smart, and that's really important to me. And now the laptop's smart, and that upsets me. But instead of looking at the individual level, if you look at the collective level, what that chart on the right-hand side tells me is the same AI that made Lee Sedol feel existential dread, like, oh no, I lost for humanity, get over yourself. No, humanity won. Humans are measurably and demonstrably getting better at a game that we thought we had solved. We didn't think there was any room to grow, and it turns out there's a huge amount of room to grow. There are entire new families of strategies for Go now, new books being written, new training techniques. Human creativity is being pushed by machine creativity. And the original AlphaGo is open source. So you can download it, get a nice gaming machine, you can run it. There's lots of other open source projects now in this domain that you can train against. And that means you no longer have to have access to a 9-dan human player to become a better Go player. You can just download the software. You can work with it on the internet. This is broadly accessible to all of humanity. So accessible to more people and lifting up the level of play. Again, the whole world is not Go, but Go is useful because it's really complex and demanding, and we sort of acknowledge that as humans, but also it's really easy to measure how well you're doing. Going into your life and saying, have you optimized your life, Mark? That's a much harder problem. We don't, I don't have an easy score for that. So this comes down to two fundamental questions we are going to have to face as humans, but especially as educators of young humans who are looking to us for, what does all this mean? Am I going to have a job? How should I use AI in the classroom? So I've written on these two questions on my Substack. You can check it out if you're interested in more detail. The first question is, like, let's imagine we end up in 5 years' time living in a world where any intellectual task can be done by AI. I actually don't think that's going to happen. I think we'll live in a world where some intellectual tasks can be done better by AI than humans, and humans will still be better at some tasks. I don't know which is which, though. But just for the sake of a little thought experiment, let's imagine 5 years from now, any intellectual task we can just outsource to a computer. Okay, great. What that means is what I choose to keep for myself and what I choose to outsource is sort of going to define me as a human. And there are people who are very afraid, saying that, well, humans are just going to outsource everything. And they're just going to like sit on the sofa drinking beer or wine or whatever the AI tells them to, and that'll be the end of humanity. And I think that's totally wrong, because I don't think that's who we are. Aristotle said that by our nature, we desire knowledge, we desire challenge. Has anyone here ever taken music instrument lessons? No. How many of you are professional musicians? You don't get to. Right. Well, that was a waste of time, wasn't it? Do you deeply regret the waste of time you put into it? Or did it bring you some joy? Because for me, sitting down at the piano and playing really poorly is a different experience than listening to Bill Evans play with genius. I like both of those things, but they're different things. And I don't regret 1 second the time I've spent learning to do art. It's really important to me as a human. So I actually don't believe that just because the affordance is out there, just because I can outsource to the AI, oh, I just will, and now humanity is, not important anymore. I think that's going to be very different. And so I'll put a really, really crisp example on this. Microsoft has a Copilot that you can integrate into Outlook. And so now there's the temptation to have AI answer emails for you. I still get a lot of emails from vendors. And some of these vendors we have an important relationship with, and I don't want to sour the relationship. I don't want to be rude, but I also do not want to spend 5 hours a week answering vendor emails. So I don't feel bad clicking Copilot and saying, politely say I'm not Western's CIO anymore and wish them well, and go, and it writes a 3-paragraph business letter that's like really nice, nobody's feelings are hurt, and I don't feel bad checking it over, making a couple edits and pressing send, because now I've saved 5 minutes. And if I do that 10 times over the course of a week, I've got almost an hour back for me to do things that I want to do. Okay, exact same use case. My partner sends me an email about one of our kids. And I click Copilot. Right. Exact same technology, nothing's changed. Exact same use case, nothing's changed. I'm using the technology to answer an email. And in the first one, you're like, yeah, that's legitimate, maybe. And in the second one, you're like, Mark, you are a morally reprehensible human being. I hate you. All that's changed is the context. So these are decisions I have to make as a human. That one's super clear. What if I am a second-year student in your course and you're teaching the equivalent of electrical circuits? This is really boring, hard material, and I didn't study, but there's a assignment, and I can have the AI do the assignment for me and get enough marks to pass the course, but I'm not going to learn the material on the assignment. What do I do? Do I ask the AI to do the assignment for me and submit it and cross my fingers and hope it did well? Because it probably did. Probably pretty simple. Or do I stay up all night doing the assignment myself? Those are value judgments. That actually has nothing, none of these questions are about technology. These are about human values. And so those are the conversations we have to be having with our young people. Is like, yes, the technology has these amazing affordances. And you can use those affordances to do really smart pro-social things like tutor yourself. So the student who is using ChatGPT to tutor them on the electric circuits material, ideally it wouldn't have been 2 a.m. the day of the exam, but that's still a good use of the AI. The student who used the AI to complete their assignment for them without ever learning the material, well, who's ultimately losing? You, the student. Those are the conversations we need to be having with young people. And then it may be the case, Tim Gowers thinks it's the case in pure mathematics, that within our lifetime, machines are smarter than us. Probably not at everything, but at a lot of things, or at some things. And how do we deal with that? That's the big question your students have. I talk to a lot of undergrad students in this job, which I love. And the question really, to be fair, the first question they had was, can we please have rules? And Susan, thank you to you and the associate deans for putting the rules in place and getting those through Senate, so that now instructors have to tell students, here are the rules for this course, for how you're allowed to use AI. They wanted those rules. But now that they've got the guidelines, they know when they're color the lines. What they're wondering is like, what does this mean for me? What is my future going to look like? What career am I going to have? That career I thought I was training for may not exist now. And how do I navigate a world where machines are intelligent in ways that when I was 10 years old, everyone said, oh, only humans can be intelligent in that way, which is also kind of anthropocentric, right? Like dolphins and whales look like they're actually pretty smart. They were smart enough to stay in the ocean and not create global warming. So we've always kind of had this anthropocentric lens of we're the smartest and best. And we are smart, but now there's machines that are smart too. And what does that mean for us? And like, I'm a technologist. I'm the last person who should be answering this question. So I'm asking it, and our students are asking it. And if the technology continues to progress in the way it's been progressing, the fundamental questions facing us are not questions of technology, they're questions that are profoundly humanistic. That is the pace of the world as I see it right now. This is where we're headed. So you asked me, what does the future look like? It looks like that. And I don't know what the destination is. I'm excited about a world where we have unimaginable exponential increases in the accessibility of education, both in terms of making what we have now more accessible to those who need accommodations, but also moving technology out around the world. If we've sort of fundamentally agreed as a society, and certainly I think everyone in this room would agree, that education is a human right. AI is the most powerful technology we have yet invented for delivering education. It is a matter of policy whether or not we make that globally available. 54% of humans on planet Earth own a mobile phone that is capable of accessing the internet. That's not all of humanity, but it's more than half. We could make policy decisions that said, okay, Canada is going to set up Canada GPT. We're going to train our own sovereign AI. We're going to make it available to anyone who wants it. You can just use it for free. It's paid for by taxes and by the government. We understand this as a public good in the true sense of economics 101, non-rival, non-excludable. That world could happen, but those are policy decisions. And I hope that you will advocate for those types of policy decisions from those who govern us, those who get involved in governance, push for this. I'm very excited about a world where we have intelligent machines that are not human. They're very different. They'll be really good at some things that we didn't expect, and they will continue to be bad at other things. But we will need to deal with that and integrate that into our lives. If we do that successfully, each of us becomes 2 orders of magnitude more capable of reaching the objectives we wanted to reach in our lives than we were in the world before we had that particular set of affordances available to us. That's talk. Happy to take any questions.